This is The Meaningful Way. I'm your host, Luke Iorio. I wanted to kick off today's show by sharing our guest's favorite quote, a mantra of sorts, from Ferdinand Foch. The most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. To be on fire, to live on fire, to me, that's not even just simply about passion. It's about consciousness, about awareness of who we truly are. It's about being intentional about how we show up and how we prioritize what matters most to us in our lives. It's knowing ourselves and expressing ourselves from that place of open, authentic vulnerability and truth. So let's see how much fire we can spark up with today's conversation. I am absolutely pleased to be joined by a leader in mindfulness, empowerment, and shamanism, HeatherAsh Amara. She's the author of the Toltec Path to Transformation, Embracing the Four Elements of Change, and the best-selling Warrior Goddess training, Become the Woman You Are Meant to Be. The heart of Amara's teaching stemmed from her long Toltec apprenticeship and teaching partnership with Don Miguel Ruiz, author of The Four Agreements, one of my personal favorite books and authors as well. Over the past 15 years, she has taught workshops and apprenticeships and trained teachers, and she now travels the world working with women to integrate the feminine wisdom of the ancients into their modern lives. And with that, HeatherAsh, thank you so much for being here on The Meaningful Way.
You're so welcome, Luke. It's a delight to be here with you.
Thank you. I guess maybe the first thing to start with is I'm curious what it was that was maybe going on in your life that led you to the path that you're on, led you to the Toltec tradition and the study of mindfulness and all of this incredible work. That's not the path most typically, traveled. So I'm curious what led you in that direction.
It's true. And I've had a little bit of an unusual life path. I grew up in Southeast Asia and moved around a lot as a kid. And when I first came to the States to go to college, that was when I really recognized something's not right, was the feeling sense. And what I recognized later is growing up in Asia, I was immersed but with people, around people that were deeply connected to spirit and community. I didn't realize that at the time. But when I moved to the States, I felt this sense of disconnection, and I couldn't name it. So I got into politics really big for a couple of years and felt really powerful and like I was doing the right thing. But I recognized I was angry, all my friends were angry, and nothing felt like it was really changing. And that's when I started studying different spiritual traditions. And I'd studied European shamanism, a lot of different traditions from around the world, when I had a dream about a man that was going to change my life. And I remember waking up going, right, where am I going to meet this human? And a week later, someone came into my office and said, oh my God, you have to meet this man. And my whole body said, I'm not ready, not ready. And it took me a year, but that man was Don Miguel, and I was so taken by his love, the community's dedication, and the tools that are part of that tradition. That is what I've woven into much of what I teach now.
I guess maybe the two things I draw out of that, one, just an observation, which is it's just shocking to me that politics would somehow lead to anger. We just don't see that anymore. But in seriousness, the piece I'd love for you to just talk a little further about is the recognition, that feeling of disconnection, because that is something that's still really, really, really prevalent to so many people right now. And what is that feeling? How did you recognize there was that disconnection that was there, and what did that mean to you?
There was a way that I felt, even when I was around people, I felt alone, or I felt like I didn't fit in. I didn't know how to connect. And I didn't even know that the language wasn't even in my head. It was just like, something doesn't feel right. And I feel like so many of us are having that now, that we're taught that if you get the right job or the right car, the right partner, then you should feel connected, happy. You should be happy. And so many people are recognizing there's something that is not fulfilling. And that longing to have that sense of intimacy and connection. And it can't be filled from the outside. It has to be created from the inside. And so having the support and the guidance and the unconditional, like, yes, you can do it, to start that journey inside or continue that journey, because many of us have been on it for a long time.
Right. I think
and continue to be.
Absolutely. I think there's more and more people that are beginning to see that realization, come to that awareness of looking within for both the answers as well as what it is that they're trying to evoke in their lives. And certainly that idea that, we even jokingly on this show have started referring to it as the happy when syndrome, because it just seems to come up so much, right? I guess maybe so you pivot towards, you find this man, right? Which is, of course, Don Miguel Ruiz in this instance. And I guess maybe just in those first early years, what were just maybe 2 or 3 of maybe your favorite moments or lessons or impactful lessons that really just grabbed hold and lit this fire in you that now has led to this 15, 20-year journey ever since?
One of the big ones was recognizing how judgmental I was towards myself and becoming aware, like really opening myself to step back and not believe everything my mind was telling me, and realize my mind wasn't who I was. My mind was something that was a program that was repeating over and over again.
Sure.
So that was a huge recognition. And then the other piece in the first couple of years was really being with a group that I felt for the first time totally unconditionally accepted me for who I was. And I felt that from Miguel deeply, 100%, no matter what I did. And that allowed me to come into relationship with myself, of starting to unconditionally love myself and show up for myself and be in acceptance. And so that was a beautiful, just very powerful time.
There really is something magical about being in a setting, whether it be an environment, a group of people that offer you that level of acceptance. And while, maybe please share with me, but, from my perspective, it's that at times when we feel that acceptance, it's like we're getting it for the first time when we have not yet fully been able to give it to ourselves. And I'm curious how that sits with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of a sudden, we're given permission that we're okay. And so many of us have this in the Western culture, especially, we have this really deep-seated belief, agreement that we're somehow broken or not good enough. And to be around people that are mirroring back, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. It's like drip method. It finally comes in and we're like, oh, I have been lying to myself. I am good enough. I'm accepted. I am loved.
Yeah.
And everything shifts.
If we would only believe all the affirmations and validations that we give to the others that we care about, and we believe them for ourselves, we'd be in great shape, right? So
exactly.
If we fast forward a bit, the latest work that you've been doing is around the Warrior Goddess books. And I guess I'm curious, what is it that inspired you to write that at this time? And what is it about what you're sharing in that book that seems to be striking such a chord, and specifically, obviously, with women?
That book was 20 years in the making, but really what I would say the fire that catalyzed the depth of that book was a divorce that I was going through at the time, really challenging divorce. And it threw me back on myself in a way that I'd never experienced before. And so to be writing that book while I was going through one of the most difficult times in my life, it felt like when you temper steel, like you put it in the fire and then you beat on it. And that's what I felt like I was going through at that time. And I came out really strong, really connected to myself. And I feel like that transformational process went into the book. I'm really vulnerable in the book. I'm really honest. And I feel like women, and I really was working with myself, was like, what is warrior energy? What does it mean to be committed to myself, to be present, to be 100% in, to say yes? And what is goddess energy? What is that place of being able to receive and open and be creative and play? So I was exploring both of these energies inside of myself. And I've talked to so many women that will just see the words and they're like, I don't know what that is, but I want it.
Yeah.
There's an energetic to these two qualities that women are really hungry for right now. And it's very, very needed for everyone. A lot of men have read the book and gotten huge impact from it as well, because the tools, the authenticity, the invitation that's through that book is for everybody and definitely geared towards women.
So maybe if you could actually speak a little further into this, because what you're describing, and to me, I would describe it, it's this yin yang harmony of these different energies,
Yes.
these different parts of ourselves that we're beginning to get in touch with. And I absolutely can see why men are drawn to that as much as the women have been, regardless of where maybe that part of that journey started with the book. And I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit further into this idea of these different aspects of who we are, this different balance that we're trying to figure out between these two parts.
Yes. And how I see it is that it's not that we're trying to get to 50% of either of them, that we're really exploring what's my essence, what's my expression in the world. And for some of us, we're more warrior-oriented. That's our nature. And some of us are more goddess-oriented. And to be willing to go through the layers, because often as we're moving through the world, when we're kids and as we become teenagers and young adults, that we have experiences that happen that we create shells that we say, okay, I'm supposed to be more warrior because that's what's needed in society, or I need to be more goddess because that's the way I was raised and I was told I have to be that way all the time, or I'm not safe to other people. Whatever, we create these shells that we have to be willing to go through and really question, is this actually my essence, or is this a way I'm protecting myself? Or I'm holding it because I think I'm supposed to. And it's the same thing with the spiritual. When we are on a healing or a spiritual path, that we often create a spiritual judge. And I tell the warrior goddess, one of the first things I do at a warrior goddess weekend is I'm like, okay, get your notebooks out and write, if I'm a good warrior goddess, that means a good warrior goddess. And then we list all the rules that we started making up in our heads about what it means to be a warrior goddess. Because really, every self-help book, inspirational book, coaching, everything that we do, it's very easy to then use against ourselves.
It absolutely.
And I feel like that's at the heart of what I'm helping to
absolutely
us all change, is how do we use things everything to benefit ourselves? Well, the obstacles, the fears, everything.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because even the way that you describe it, it's how is it that we find that essence, that truth within ourselves, and we don't get it wrapped up in what it is that we think is expected of us and what society expects or otherwise. Of course, then all of a sudden we create these new rules and we create these just new expectations of ourselves, which are nothing more than judgments. And so that's an interesting path to be able to travel. So I guess maybe, how do we do that? How do we, let me start with this one first. How do we begin to, I think one of the frames that you used was align with life. How is it that we really truly start to recognize what is our essential self versus just these other expectations and labels that have been placed on us that we've somehow picked up and taken on as our own?
To keep stepping back and witnessing what we're thinking, how we're reacting to things, what our emotional body is doing, what our physical body is doing, to get super curious. So I see this as a journey towards self-intimacy. And if we're going to be intimate with ourselves, that means that we're stopping and saying, hi, who are you? Who are you now? Not who you were before, who you think you're supposed to be, but like, who am I now? Yeah. So that's the beginning. And this idea of aligning with life is recognizing that we're part of a much larger cycle. And we often work in linear ways. So we often take on this idea of, if I just do everything right, if I do this and this and this and do these steps in the right order, I'm not quite sure what the order is, but I have to figure it out, then I will be successful, happy, married, like whatever it is.
Sure.
And it's so detrimental to us. And nature works in cycles. Life works in cycles. There's always beginnings. There's always endings. There's always miracles that happen spontaneously. Like, I went from here to here. Wow. I don't even know how that happened. And so to start coming back into alignment with life, that life is about death and life is about birth and everything in between. And when we start to open our arms to accept all the flavors of life, then we come back into our center and we're not telling ourselves, I should be somewhere else. We're like, I'm right here in this moment, in this part of the cycle, and this too will change, both the good and the difficult. It will always change. So
it's one of the things now I can even see some of the blend of the background that you have, of where you start with this mindfulness and this practice of presence awareness, so that as we navigate our lives, we can begin to understand what are the experiences we're having, and what are the insights that we're gaining from those experiences, so that we can constantly reflect on what does this mean to who I am? And does this feel like it's leading me towards more truth, or does it feel like it's leading me astray in some way, and being really present to what it is that you feel in your body, as well as feel within your heart and your emotions and your full emotional body as well. Could you speak a little bit, it's an interesting statement to talk about life is death as well as that birth. And I was hoping you elaborate a little bit further on that statement of what do you mean by life is death?
That a big part of being in the physical body is that we're going to lose things. So people are going to die, we're going to change, relationships are going to transform. So for me, those are all the part of the death cycle, which is incredibly beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful part of the cycle. It's hard. And when we say, I'm not going to look at the loss or the grief or the fact that we're limited, this is limited existence, then we're cutting out such a rich part of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so to really look towards, how do I befriend death? And in the Toltec tradition, there's a whole teaching around what we call the angel of death. Mm. And that the angel of death is incredibly loving. It's a beautiful metaphor, incredibly loving, and that she's loaned us our life. She's gifted us our life for as long as we're here for, and at some point she will take it away, and she'll take everything away. Yeah. And so to start to have a relationship of not, I have to close and protect myself and hold on to everything, but how do I show up so completely presently with what's here and love it fiercely, 100% open-hearted, yes, and know that it is going to go away at some point. Yeah. And that's a serious warrior path of the heart.
Absolutely.
To be in that openness with life.
In your latest book, the Warrior Goddess Way, you dive very deeply what I would, describe as maybe three main themes that are within the book: wisdom, authenticity, and yes. And I was hoping if we could go just a little briefly into each of these, and maybe let's just begin with what is it what is wisdom to you? What is it that you're trying to express, and what's this wisdom that we're trying to get in touch with?
Wisdom is the depths of our being to listen to the information that's bubbling up. And that also connects us to all of life. That when we connect to our wisdom, there's a stillness that comes that allows us to get information that we wouldn't otherwise be able to access with our minds. There's a feeling sense, there's a knowing in the body. And so tapping into that wisdom, giving ourselves the space to slow down and listen to a different aspect of ourselves. It takes practice, and is very, very possible for all of us.
So two of the areas that you brought up with wisdom had to do with forgiveness and apology. And I thought that was very, very unique. I was hoping you could go a little further into that of what is the wisdom of forgiveness, which some people might be able to jump a little bit to, but then the wisdom of apology. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So the wisdom of forgiveness is that as we learn to forgive ourselves and others, that we create more spaciousness to listen. So, and one of the things I really talk about with forgiveness is you have to, when you're in relationship with the wisdom of forgiveness, it's not, I have to forgive. It's how do I support myself in forgiving? And if you're not ready to forgive, hold that. I'm not ready to forgive, period. That's your wisdom coming through of knowing you're not ready. And there'll be a time as you're listening that all of a sudden you'll be like, now I'm ready. Or you'll keep creating the opportunity for that grace to happen. And the pace around apology is for women, I see this especially with women, and I know men do this as well, but especially women, we tend to apologize for everything. Someone will step on our toe and will say, I'm sorry, I got in your way. And this is I've talked to so many women that are like big CEOs of companies, and they still have this place of apologizing. And when I tracked it, what I recognize is that we have a tendency to really apologize for our existence and for taking up space. And so the wisdom of knowing when to let go of apologizing to when to not to apologize. And that can be super uncomfortable journey.
Yeah.
And the wisdom to know when to do a really deep, authentic apology. Mm-hmm. Because there's times that we do want to apologize. There's times that we've hurt someone else or that we've overstepped something, that an honest, deep from our soul, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for your experience. I'm sorry for my action, is deep wisdom. And knowing the difference, trying to sort that out.
Excellent. This second part about authenticity, I guess maybe the piece that I wanted to ask and inquire about here is that there's an element right now, because there's so much talk around authenticity, that it gets thrown around in a lot of different ways. And there's even been, I don't know if you'd call it criticism or skepticism or whatever the right word is for it, right? Of authenticity. Oh, it's just, I'm being authentic. I'm being real. And it almost becomes like this excuse that our egos get to use to just, right? To just be who we want to be.
Exactly.
And we don't care, right? And so I was wondering if you could distinguish what are you really truly getting at of what's really here within authenticity, and how is that different than some of the ways it might be a little bit portrayed out there right now?
Absolutely, yes. That authenticity isn't a defense mechanism or a response to, I get to do whatever I want to do. I'm being authentic. Authenticity stems from stillness. It stems from getting quiet. It stems from going towards the darkness and the willingness to let go of the known and step towards the mystery. So as we're willing to let go of who we think we are, the roles, the activity, the busyness, the distraction, and start to get quiet, start to settle inside of ourselves, what will arise naturally is our authenticity. We don't have to figure it out or defend it or use it as an armor or anything. It's simply, that's what arises. And what I've seen is that when that authenticity is coming from our stillness and coming from our wisdom, we are naturally incredibly kind to ourselves and others, very loving, very open-hearted, non-judgmental. There's a lot of space. That, for me, is the hallmark of authenticity, is that it's an expression of our connection to stillness, to spirit, to our essence.
So the last one that you brought up, and I even heard a little bit of this in your own story as you were sharing before of where some of this got produced from in your life, you talk about this theme, this yes, and it's almost this yes to obstacles and yes to all these things that come up in life. So I was wondering if you could share some of the wisdom around that as well.
Yeah, the last pillar of Warrior Goddess Way, yes. And I started calling it yay, and I realized yes is a little bit more accessible to people, is that as we're moving through the world, when we set intent, when we have a goal or a desire for something, what I believe happens is we plant a seed in the universe and we say, universe, I really want this. And the universe says, awesome. And the support and the guidance and the synchronicities start to show up, and all the obstacles. So any obstacle between where you are now and where you want to go starts to show up. And we forget, we'll get into this thing of like, oh my God, an obstacle, I'm doing it wrong, or I should judge myself that I have this obstacle, I should just be living this new thing, or we feel victimized by it. But the truth is, the obstacle is saying, I feel like the universe is going, sweetheart, this is so awesome, you want that? Clean this up.
Yeah.
And you clean this up, and then you'll walk into that new reality. And so to fall in love with this idea that we're in process of, as an obstacle arises, yay, something to clean, and that our energy, our life force, our agreements are tied up in that obstacle. Yeah. So when we learn to face it and say, you are a worthy obstacle, I'm in, let's do this dance, then you get your energy back.
Yeah. It's amazing because I've been through this in my own life and certainly worked with so many clients on this, is when you do it's exactly as you're describing, you make that statement. And for me, it was simply, I know what it is. I want to be free and I want to feel that freedom within, right? And that's immediately when the universe goes, you do, huh? Let me show you all the ways that you're not doing that.
Yes, exactly. And there's here and here.
And here, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's embracing that and being able to say yes, because the universe is actually giving you exactly what's going to lead you to what it is that you're after. So I guess maybe just a few things as we begin to wrap our conversation together. What's maybe one practice that our listeners could take on, that you could share, that'll help us just bring a little bit more of that peace, that stillness into our everyday lives?
one practice that I love doing is looking in my life for where are the gaps. And a gap for me is the moments like walking to the bathroom, driving to work, standing in line for a cup of coffee, the places where there's space to go towards stillness. And what we tend to do is fill it with thoughts. What am I doing next? So any place that you notice a gap in your life, make the commitment to start to explore and play with, how do I use my breath to get more quiet here? How do I settle into my body as I'm walking down the hall to my boss's office? And to bring our awareness back into our bodies and our hearts rather than running the list of what I call disaster mind, what went wrong in the past, what might go wrong in the future, what I need to figure out. And that serves us incredibly well.
That's wonderful. I absolutely love that idea of sitting in and listening for the space between the beats in the music.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So in terms of, and here's kind of a bigger, loftier question, but whether it be in terms of your family or your clients or the world, how would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as someone that loved fully and deeply, and that was able to see into people, that they felt seen.
Wonderful. So then just to bring our conversation full circle, what is it that makes life and work meaningful to you at this point in your journey?
So many things. I think really everything, every experience that I have, I find incredible joy, even the challenges. I feel so blessed every moment to be able to be in this physical existence and touching and connecting and playing with people in the ways that I get to. So I have to say everything.
That's fantastic. HeatherAsh, I want to thank you so much for coming here and being with the listeners of The Meaningful Way.
Thank you so much.
And for everybody, I hope when you hear that excitement for everything, that right there tells you that is a soul and a heart that is on fire. And the ways that you get there is to begin to sit with that stillness, to find that space that's in between the beats of your life, to be able to find those different parts of yourself that you can sit into and you can reflect on and be mindful of, where is this leading me and what does this mean to me? The more that you take that on as a practice, the more you'll continue to discover who you truly are and how it is that you want to navigate this crazy thing that we call life. And so with that, until next time, as always, continue to enjoy the journey. Thanks for tuning in to The Meaningful Way. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor and please subscribe and follow along with all these great guests, their stories and interviews. Also, it helps us a lot if you not only share some of your favorite episodes online, but also provide us feedback. Go into iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast app happens to be, and rate the show. Provide us some feedback and let us know how it is that we're doing. If you want to learn more about what we're up to, whether it be with the IPEC Coach Training School, the Live, Lead, Play Network, or even just what's evolving with The Meaningful Way, go on and head on over to lukeiorio.com.